Good morning. My name is David Shenz. I'm the Vice President for Operations at ERP Suites. I'm really excited to be joined by Sean Mead, who is our Head of Security.
Good morning, David. It's really good to be here.
So another topic we think a lot about, Sean, is cloud and customers who are moving their environments into cloud providers like Amazon's AWS, Microsoft's Azure, Oracle's OCI. And when we talk about assessing security in a cloud framework, how do you think about it, Sean? And how is it kind of similar to private hosting or hosting at a client site versus hosting inside of one of these public clouds?
So a lot of the concerns really do match up pretty directly. A lot of our issue comes in with learning a new language, is the way I'll put this. If you and I speak different languages and then we finally figure out how to communicate, and then we bring someone else in who's yet a third language, we still have all the same things that we want to say to each other, but now we have to use different terminology. And actually a lot of the stuff with cloud, when it comes to security, that's kind of one of the big issues, is there's a lot of different terminology, whether we're talking AWS, OCI, Azure, all of these different services out there, and as people move them into the cloud, the concerns are exactly the same as they would be if they were on premise, minus, hey, I might have a fan that died in this machine, or did someone get to come into the data center or not? That kind of stuff is now no longer our responsibility. We've handed that part off to Amazon or Oracle or whomever it may be. But we still want to go through the same things that we would on premise. So segregation of duties, things such as looking and making sure that we have least privilege on all of our accounts, hardening anything that we're showing to the outside world, and making sure that there are proper DMZs, things of that nature. It has to be thought of in much the same way as we thought of otherwise. So we would like to have multi-factor authentication. We'd like to have that on there for any access. You still want a good password, as far as it should be a good complex password. And I know that people believe that if things are in the cloud, it's just automatically, magically there, and surely they're taking care of all of my backup and all of that kind of stuff. That's not necessarily true, number one. A lot of times when you buy a service of that nature, you're buying the VM capability. Just because I just created a VM doesn't mean that it's going to be backed up. And granted, we're talking about data centers who have made a complete business of this, so uptime is pretty darn good in this kind of stuff, but still there's the possibility of something going down. But let's go with the more likely issue of I did something and I wound up thrashing my own systems. Whatever it may be, I may have thrashed one, I may have done more. Again, if I didn't buy a backup system, if I haven't paid the extra for this or that, it's just a box, and we have to think in the same terms, in the same goals, but maybe different terminologies when we're looking at the cloud.
So if I'm thinking about VMs running in AWS's EC2, I still need to be thinking about how am I creating snapshots of those EC2 instances to S3. I still need to be thinking about what is my DR solution, because Amazon is just as susceptible to fire, tornadoes, everything else. And so I still need a DR process, and I need to make sure I've enabled the DR technology inside of an AWS context, as you said, but I still need that run book and those technologies configured and set up, right?
Absolutely, without a doubt. So even if we don't have to worry about anything ever happening to their hardware or anything, they've got that part taken care of. We still have to be able to recover from a disaster, because those systems, even though they may be better protected physically, we still have cyber issues that can occur. And if I have communications out here in the rest of the world, or servers communicating with those, a lot of applications can't handle long delays, and if they can't talk to another one, they start shutting themselves down. So that DR plan is still absolutely critical, no matter how we look at it, whether it's a cyber attack or whether it's an earthquake, it still has to exist.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've helped customers set up DR replication and things like that in AWS and help them build those runbooks before. I think another thing as well, Sean, to think about for customers is that kind of the management plane for AWS is also exposed. So we've seen many customers who have made, really kind of trivial mistakes around setting up access on things like S3 buckets, on the storage buckets, and making those publicly accessible when they shouldn't be, or giving admin credentials or to public users, which is never good, or even a lot of misconfigurations around kind of those roles and ACLs. How do you think about how do you audit that information? How do you audit those roles? How do you make sure that those make sense?
So AWS and OCI both have tools in place that can wind up helping to look over everything that's going on. You can even, and I'm just going to give a small example, you can make it to where there's a notification if a configuration file for users or for that high-level access about what you're speaking, there's a way to have that configuration file reported on every time there's a change and showing the change. Mm-hmm. So this kind of due diligence is still the same. You can use different tools. You can use some of the stuff that's built in. Oh, wait a minute, though. I don't want to necessarily pay for that as much as they're wanting me to pay. Are there ways for me to do this? Yes, you can still wind up having things logs sent to a SIM. They're VMs. Mm-hmm. Even though they're in Amazon, that doesn't make them magic. It makes them VMs. And so just as you have logs reporting back on your local systems, you can have them reporting back on the other systems. So there can be local tools, speaking local as in my own business tools that I already had, because Amazon's a large service, so is Oracle's OCI. Those are large services, and they realize you're going to want to know what's going on. You're going to want to know if someone's trying to come in, because they may be part of a solution that protects you a little bit against brute force, but it's still those specific accounts. That's where the responsibility hits us instead of Amazon. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a customer really needs to be thoughtful in kind of how they deploy their existing security footprint to kind of manage their cloud environment, or if they're really kind of cloud native, then maybe it makes more sense to use some of the Amazon tooling, mm-hmm. or as kind of the opposite extreme. And so many times for many customers, I think it's kind of finding that happy medium, right? Saying kind of a mix and match of the right tools, depending on their environment and circumstances and risk.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to kind of the same evaluation we have for some of our local systems. Different software programs are going to have different pros and cons. Mm-hmm. Well, again, as far as I'm concerned, AWS's solution, using them as an example, or OCI, their solutions for one thing may be a risk versus cost. They may be a better solution for that. Mm-hmm. It's just another product in security. We should look at it as, where is the best solution, and how do we tie them together as far as being able to view into that. I think it's just a product evaluation to a certain degree.
That's great. I like that, Sean.